going to trust you
Okay.
to do what you got to do, broski. So today we are
Okay.
talking about irrigation and what it is. So we had this problem. Mariah told us the rain comes down from the mountains. It melts the snow. And then Austin told us all that water goes into the rivers and then it floods. It's like Madeline Kate is drawing a bath for her brother Grider and is going and filling the bathtub up. But then Madeline Kate gets a text from her friend and then she starts watching a YouTube video and she forgets about it. And the bathtub starts overflowing and overflowing. And then thankfully, though, her best friend in the whole entire universe, Aiden, is there. And Aiden says, I've got a solution for this. And he goes and has a little hose that he puts into the water and into another bathtub because Madeline Kate has a fancy bathroom with 2 bathtubs. And then the water starts going, not overflowing, but going into the other bathtub. The water's still going there because for some reason she hasn't turned off the knob. I mean, come on, Madeline Kate, let's think about this here. And then Caleb goes, oh my goodness, my 2 best friends are here and the bathtubs are starting to overflow again. So then he winds up going, having another hose that he goes puts over. And this is the idea of irrigation, going and diverting the water, making it spread out between lots of different places so it does not go and get water everywhere. Because remember, that flooding was bad. Samuel just went out to get some chicken wings, and then he comes back and sees that Alexander and Isaiah, his brothers, have washed away because of the flood. So farmers start digging canals, start digging trenches. So they start digging these man-made riverbeds, essentially, to have the water go flow through them. Now, this is going to have a big advantage, though, because notice how in the picture on the bottom there, he has them cut perpendicular as well, so at right angles. Why do you think he has some of those at perpendicular to the original canal and to the river? Why? What does he want to do? What is he making more possible? Someone either raise their hand or put a me in the chat so that I can go and call on your awesomeness. So why do we have, so we've cut this long canal there, which is going to be awesome to making it so things don't flood. But then he cut these perpendicular, meaning right angle, going far out into land. Why would he want to do that? Why would he want to divert the water that way as well? Yes, Austin.
Maybe they're going to make houses there later.
Maybe, but that's not going to be the primary reason to have the water going long like that. What do you think, Mr. Ormsby?
I think they could, so the farms can have water.
Okay, what were you going to say, Lance?
More land to farm.
Exactly. Yeah. You and Samuel have it. This idea that if you have more land getting water, you can have more things growing crops. And this is going to become one of the most important ideas that we're going to discuss all school year. Okay. We're going to come and hit it time and time again. So you guys are about to be amazed by my incredible art skills here. You're going to say, Mr. Kenny, you are the most amazing artist the universe has ever blessed us with. So, and I want you guys to draw this and make this because this is amazing. All right, this is going to be, ooh, gross. This is going to be something so important, something that we need to understand. It is going to be the circle of awesome. And you might say, Senor Kenny, what is the circle of awesome and why does it matter? Well, the circle of awesome is something we're going to see throughout civilizations all of the time. So it starts off with more food. And I'm going to make that a little bit smaller, the font, because it looks gargantuan, and because it is. So more food, okay? More farmland equals more food. And you're saying, okay, this is great because I do like to eat food. It is something I enjoy doing on a daily basis. You don't like to eat food, Mariah? That's not good. You should eat food because then you'll wither away to nothing and then we'll be sad and I'll cry. Now, when there's more food, though, what always happens is there's more people. Because you see, when people start eating, less people starve to death And since less people are starving to death, and because you're healthy, you're able to have more children, less people get sick. So more people. This is important. So we're going to go and have more people. I'll have a little arrow to kind of. So more people. Now, because there's more people, though, here's the thing. There are always going to be those super genius people in the world. The Albert Einsteins, the Isaac Newtons, the Mariah Harts, the Lance Bowden. All of these people that are so bright that they're going to change the world with their awesomeness. So we have more smart people. Yeah, that's right. More smart people. More people equals more smart people, because there's that percentage, like where we have those Madeline Cates, those, Aiden Inmans, those people that are going to create amazing things for the world to see. And it's driving me crazy that I have this there, so I have to move it, and it won't let me. But more people are going to mean more discoveries and inventions. See, because those smart people, they are not content just being smart. They want to change the world. They want to do things. They want to have things be better. So more smart people, more discovery inventions, and a lot of those discovery inventions are going to wind up making more food. This is the circle of awesome. We're going to talk about it all of the time. Please make sure you tattoo this to your brain. Put it in the brain bank so that you have it forever, so that we can know more food equals more people, which equals more smart people, which equals more discoveries and inventions, which are going to wind up going to more food. And then guess what? You have more people, which means more smart people, more discoveries and inventions, which means more food. This is important. And this is what's going to happen. I know it makes me hot too, just thinking about the amazingness of it. So, irrigation is going to make this possible. More farming. And this is so important because guess what? That computer you're using to look at my ugly face, yeah, because of technology, because of those smart people, because we had the more food. This cell phone that lets me have a supercomputer in my pocket. I mean, I grew up like when computers were slow as, rocks and everything, and gigantic. And now in my pocket, I have this thing that is like stronger than like all of the computers I had like growing up until I was like, I don't know, goodness, like a couple years ago. It's amazing. This water bottle, guess what? Wouldn't be possible without the circle of awesome. This desk I'm using, everything. Our lives are completely dictated because of the circle of awesome. So, moving on. This whole process is called irrigation. It does two things. It stops the floods from destroying everything and ruining it because they're unpredictable, but it also means they can grow more food. And more food equals more people, which equals more smart people, which equals more technology and advancements, which means more food, more people, more smart people, more technology and advancements, so on and so forth. And you spin and spin and spin and spin and spin until you get dizzy. Yeah, keep it in the brain. And so we have these irrigation fields being created to water the crops, just like Lance told us. We have these irrigation fields to make it so the things don't overflow. So when Madeline Kate forgets to turn off the bathtub, that it's going to be okay because the water will be diverted into other things. I bet your mom would be so mad if you did that, by the way. All right. So we got to keep moving. We got to keep moving. So we got this for a little bit longer. So that's one of the problems with recording. Like now there's evidence of how like weird I actually am. Because before like nobody knew for certain. It was just like a legend or a myth that I was an oddball. And now there's proof. All right. So remember, you're always able to go back to these. These are in your Schoology page. We need to keep on trucking, Kidderitos. Keep on trucking. So, Sumer. Sumer is going to be the first civilization in the region. And I want you to realize something, though. Sumer is this orange area right here. Now, this is not a kingdom, an empire, a country, anything like that, okay? It is not. It is a collection of separate independent countries. These things are called city-states. So Eridu, Uruk, Lagash, Nippur, Kish, they are all their own little countries. It's just like if Frederick, Maryland was its own little country. If Baltimore, Maryland was also its own little country. Washington, D.C. was its own little country. We're all connected. We have this gigantic thing called the United States. They didn't have that. These are cities and their surrounding areas, and each city has its own king, has its own laws, has its own traditions, all right? And sometimes they're friendly, sometimes they trade, sometimes they're not friendly, and they fight each other. We have evidence of this. We think probably the first wars were actually fought because, like, Madeline Kate was taking too much of the Euphrates River water, and then they're like, hey, we don't have enough water for us down here in Arenville. So then they would go fight a war, and then they'd come to an agreement. Now, even though these are different, separate, independent countries, we all combine them together, calling them Sumer or Sumeria, because they are going to share some things, all right? All of them will use the same language. So they'll all be able to communicate. All of them are going to have the same religion. They're going to worship the same gods and goddesses, which are going to be very similar to our Egyptian gods and goddesses that we'll talk about later on. And they are also going to share the same culture. All right. So they're going to see all of these similarities. These are the same kinds of people, but they're in their own separate independent countries called city-states. Now, on the bottom here, this is going to be a picture of cuneiform, which we're going to talk more about cuneiform later on in the week, which is going to be great because I'm going to get to talk about our Epic of Gilgamesh, which is going to be a fantastic story that I can't wait to share with you all. Here we also see some artwork here. Now, what can we learn about the Sumerians looking about these two statues? And no, they did not have crazy eyeballs like that. Someone painted them on. So who wants to think, what can we learn about the people of Sumer as we look at these two statues? Yes, Danielle, darling.
Well, it looks like they're like praying or something.
Okay. So maybe that they're religious. Okay. What else can we learn about these people just looking at these two statues that we have of them? Oh, come on. There's some real obvious things. What can we learn about this man by looking at this picture of the man? Yes, Aaron.
It looks like he's like from, I don't know how to explain it, but it's his clothes that does not look American, like it's not average on what we look to what clothes we wear today.
Yeah, you can learn about their clothes. Definitely. That's one of the obvious things, how they dressed, what they did. Gus, do you want to add something, sir?
They wore stuff that looked like bowls on their head.
Yeah, he's got an interesting hat. We think he's probably a priest or a priest king. Dun, 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 dun. See, this guy's kind of jacked. He's got some muscles and he's got a pretty cool beard. So the Sumerians were first ruled by priest kings. So here's how it probably wound up being. All right. So one day, Nicholas says, hey, you all should listen to me because I can talk to the gods. And you know how that flood just happened and washed your houses and families and crops away? Yeah, that's because the gods weren't happy. So if you go offer to the gods, and don't worry, I'll make sure it gets to them 100%, then they'll be happy. And because people didn't want the gods washing away their stuff, they said, oh, okay. So they start going and making offerings that Nick takes and then goes and dedicates some to the gods. And Nick is going to accumulate more and more wealth as he keeps on, quote unquote, communicating with the gods. And then he winds up being so powerful that he becomes king. And this is how we get the top of our social pyramid here. So the priest kings are going to be in charge, and they're going to have this idea that they can communicate with the gods, they can intervene and make it so that things like the river doesn't flood. And of course, if the river does flood, they'll say, well, the gods aren't happy with what you're doing, so we need to go and do better. Then the priest king, they're going to have other priests there because there's going to be all of this work to do. So Carson and Ryland and Cypria wind up becoming priests. as well and start serving, and they start accumulating wealth. And then you need people who are smart. Well, that's where the scribes came in. Now, our society is wonderful in the fact that every single person is able to get an education. From the years 5 to the years 18, you get schooling for free. And then in some instances, you can even have even more. This was not the case in the Sumerians. For the Sumerians, very, very, very few people received an education at all. The scribes were a very small and select group, of course, coming from the richest families, and they're the only people who knew how to read and write. They would keep the government records and documents so that it could be done. We could have the records. We're going to wind up seeing that the scribes have recorded things of Sumerians trading with India, trading with Egypt and other distant lands. Now, the warriors are also going to be high up on the social class because, of course, those are the people that have sharp, pointy things. So we really want to keep, Kalen and Lance and Karachi and Haley happy, because if they're not happy, they use those sharp, pointy things on us. So, of course, Nick makes sure to pay and keep the warriors very happy because he doesn't want the sharp, pointy things being used on him and his friends. He wants to use those on the people that are not listening to them. Finally, in our upper class, you need people to actually do the work. So you have folks like Aiden and Divine going and wind up being the government officials, doing the jobs, doing the work. That's right. Now, that's our top class. This is actually going to be a very, very small group. And I'm going to show you what the pyramids probably would have looked like if we look at population size. This next middle part is going to be the largest by far, like 90-something% of all the people are going to fall in the middle. They're going to be the people like the artisans. Artisans are people who make beautiful things, like artisan art. Yeah, get it right there. And then our merchants and farmers are going to be making the food. The merchants sell the stuff. And our fishermen, because fish are going to be a very important food source when it's so hard to find meat and things like that. These are going to be most of the people. They're going to be working to make sure that the country, the kingdom, has everything that it needs. All right. So finally is going to be the lower class, and those are going to be people that were unfortunately enslaved. Now, typically slavery for this people is going to be if you lost a war. The people that lost, some of those people would be enslaved. Or, for example, if you go on a shopping spree, like Gus is like, oh man, the PS5 is coming out, the Xbox One X is coming out, and even though I, have a One X coming, I want to get a One S too. And so then Gus buys 13 PS5s and 15 Xbox One X's, and then obviously doesn't have that money, and he has to wind up then being in debt, things like that. Then he would probably sell his family into slavery so he doesn't have to go to jail. That was a common thing as well. I know, right? Not even you, your family? How mean. I'm going to show you a quick example.
Sound like me, because I want a bunch of Xboxes and PlayStation stuff.
If we were to go draw this to scale, this is probably what it would wind up looking like. So we're going to have our top right there. All right. Very small. Maybe 1 to 3% of the population. This would be the middle, which is almost everybody, our farmers, our craftsmen, merchants. And then for those enslaved, it'd probably be probably something like that. That'd be the bottom. So we see it wouldn't be a very, very pretty pyramid. Okay. So that is going to be our notes for the day. I'm going to stop the recording. So if you'd like to turn your cameras back on, if you turn